May takes a hit on her refusal to be rushed on Brexit. The boss of Ryanair says he'll base new aircraft in the EU, where there's more political certainty. He calls UK ministers headless chickens.
In looking at negotiations, it would not be right for me or this government to give a running commentary on negotiations.
Also this lunchtime, school gate protests by parents whose children were sent home for wearing the wrong uniform. If this is what the cautious Swiss plan for the Rio Paralympic opening ceremony, it's going to be quite a show. And what goes up? Well, it'll be well worth waiting for.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alistair Stewart.
Good afternoon. The Prime Minister said she wouldn't be rushed and won't be giving a running commentary on Britain's exit from the EU. The charismatic boss of Ryanair said her government were behaving like headless chicken and vowed to base his latest batch of aircraft in continental Europe, where he said there was more political certainty. Mrs May's Brexit minister, David Davis, also got a slapdown for suggesting it was likely the UK would leave the single market. Number 10 suggested he was getting a little ahead of himself. Our political correspondent Paul Brand on the latest fireworks over Brexit.
On Brexit today, there was some clear direction as Ryanair decided it won't be landing its 50 new planes here in the UK, choosing to base them in a more certain climate across the Channel. The chief executive, Michael O'Leary, campaigned to stay in the EU, and he doesn't want to wait for the government to make a plan. Saying quite bluntly this morning, already you can see the Brexit decision is costing real jobs, real visitors are being lost and real investment is being postponed. There's a bunch of headless chickens here. They don't know what they voted for and have no idea where they're going to finish up. So we have to be cautious with our expansion next year, which is a pity. It is a pity too for Theresa May, who returned from tough talks with world leaders in China to meet a more routine opponent today.
Questions to the Prime Minister.
PMQs is back for a new term with a new Prime Minister who's only done this once before, and there were plenty of questions on Brexit.
Will she beware those who are trying to make leaving the European Union ever more complicated and protracted?
When I next meet with the Vice-Chancellor of York University to discuss Brexit and higher education, what assurances can I pass to him?
Angus Robertson.
But with the Labour leader focused on housing and benefits, it was the SNP which asked the killer question.
The UK government has had all summer to come up with a plan, to come up with a strategy. So far, we've just had waffle. So may I ask the Prime Minister a very simple question, but it's quite important. Does she want the UK to remain fully within the European single market?
Prime Minister.
What I want for the UK is that we put into practice the vote that was taken by the UK people of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. That we get the right deal for the trade in goods and services with the European Union in a new relationship that we will be building with them, and that we also introduce control of the movement of people from the European Union into the United Kingdom.
That doesn't really tell us anything we didn't already know, as pressure continues to build on this government to make a plan for Brexit, just as businesses like Ryanair are already doing.
And Paul joins us live from just outside the Palace of Westminster, as you can see. So, Prime Minister talking about it in PMQs and just made a statement as well. She still won't be rushed.
Absolutely not. We already knew the Prime Minister wasn't for turning on Brexit, and she is not for rushing either. Straight after Prime Minister's questions, she updated MPs on that trip to China for the G20 meeting, and she told them that she understands people are keen to see rapid progress on Brexit, but she said, "We will think about issues in a sober and considered way. We will not take decisions until we are ready." Now, that was met with the usual impatience from MPs who want some detail now on all of this. And I do think the announcement from Ryanair this morning adds some real urgency. OK, their chief executive has long been a big fan of the EU. He campaigned for it, as you saw there in my piece. But I think it does raise the issue, or highlight the issue here, that the longer Brexit takes, the less I think businesses will be willing to hang around.
Paul, thank you. A head teacher's decision to turn away scores of pupils for wearing the wrong uniform has sparked controversy in Kent. 50 children were sent home from Hartsdown Academy yesterday, with a further 20 barred from entering this morning. Well, the moves prompted protests from parents outside the school gates and criticism of what they say is a draconian approach. Well, Martha Fairley joins us live from outside the school this lunchtime. Why precisely such a big fuss, Martha?
Well, yesterday should have been the first day of school for thousands of pupils across the country, but for 50 here at Hartsdown Academy, they didn't get any further than the school gate, and that's because staff stopped them and told them that they were incorrectly dressed. Now, the school website says that they have a commitment to perfect uniform, and the man behind that policy is the head teacher, Matthew Tate, and he joins me now. So, we had parents who were furious, we had year 7s who were in tears. What exactly went wrong?
We wanted to set out, and we did with parents in July, what the uniform was, what we were expecting, and we explained that if children weren't in the right uniform, they would be sent home. What I wanted for the school is what the school needs, which is that every child is in perfect uniform, every child is committed and proud of this school, and to give that environment. Now, the vast majority of our students arrived yesterday in the right uniform, and had a great day at school. And what's happening now is that as they're seeing that that's actually the expectation here now, they are conforming and actually they're getting their uniform right and they're back in school and happy.
Some of these things were really minor details, a buckle on a shoe or the wrong type of material for trousers. Surely what's more important is that you get the pupils into the classrooms and learning.
What is crucial is that we set the right standards here. This school has not had a great time over the last few years, and some of the results and things have not been where they should be. I believe that children in this community and the children coming to this school deserve the very best education, and I care far too much to allow them to rule the roost, and so that they end up getting a poor education and not actually getting the results that they deserve and need.
Very briefly, it was your first day at the school yesterday as well, so
well.
Would you have done things differently if you did it again?
There's things I would have done around clarity in terms of in terms of exactly what the uniform entailed, because some parents were confused about shoes and things, and that was something I didn't want. However, no, we would still have had the stance that if you're not in the right uniform, you would be going home.
OK, thank you very much. Well, we understand that the majority of the parents are in support of the uniform policy, and there's now only a handful of pupils who still haven't managed to make it into class in the correct uniform.
Martha and your guest, thank you both very much indeed. And I'm joined live in the studio by Peter Grigg from the Children's Society, and from Manchester by David Burgess from the Schoolwear Association. Let me start with you, Peter. Point of principle, uniform is supposed to iron out the differences so you don't know whether a kid is wealthy or whatever, and as the head just said, it gives a uniformity. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, it can do that, but what we hear so often in our experience at the Children's Society is that parents are under so much pressure to get the right uniform. When they can't afford it, they go into debt to try and do so. You know, it should be a time of great experience for children going back to school in September, but so many parents are worried about that, and schools don't always help by giving really strict rules about where they can and can't buy their uniform.
David, is that price thing a problem in the sense that, I mean, I can remember a million years ago when I was at school, one supplier had the contract. It's a monopoly. If you've got a monopoly, you whack the prices up.
That's not the case, actually, because if there is one supplier that supplies the school-specific part of the uniform, they've usually gone through a tendering process. It's just a rigorous process, and it is a very competitive process. So I think that prices, overall, the Schoolwear Association carried out lots of research, and we believe that school uniform in general is of great value. Do
you actually talk to the children, David, about what they would like to wear? Because the head was just saying there to Martha, you know, it was little nuances like the specific material or a buckle or something. Do you talk to the kids?
We carried out some research, or we commissioned some research through Oxford Brookes University and had focus groups with children. This was 3 or 4 years ago, but the vast majority of children, and I think from your report just then, love wearing uniform, and actually, as a headmaster the other day said, the most important thing is they come to school and they come to learn, and the uniform is just that thing at the front of everything that says this is what we stand for. And I'm
going to have to cut you off, David, because we're running out of time, and I want to give Peter, if I made the final word. I mean, in a sense, that's the point. Kids like to be individual, and the head was saying it's little things like buckles. I mean, it's a fine balance between having a school that looks like a group of people who are all proud, as the head said, and just saying, yeah, but I've got a slightly different tie or I've got a slightly different buckle.
Well, children tell us that this really matters. There's so many children across the country who are feeling stigmatised or bullied sometimes because of what they are and aren't wearing. That's why schools have to have real sensitivity to how much you can afford, which suppliers to go to, and actually the government can do a bit more.
And that's what the head should be looking out for as much as whether it's the same trousers.
And the government too has a role to try and make sure that the schools have those policies in place and follow them.
Peter here with me and David in Manchester. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, Sports Direct boss Mike Ashley has been explaining major changes at the company to shareholders today in the wake of the scandal over pay, zero-hour contracts and general working conditions. This morning, a profits warning was issued, but Mr. Ashley, who of course is the majority shareholder, now says that he intends to turn the brand into the Selfridges of sports retail. He made the announcement at the company's Shirebrook warehouse, where MPs compared working conditions to those of a Victorian workhouse. Our business editor Joel Hills is there for us now. We know that the unions and indeed many MPs, you reported it last night, were not happy with what's on the table. Are they any happier now?
Shareholders have slightly different concerns, Alistair. Their principal one is that Mike Ashley, while owning just over half the business, basically holds all of the power in Sports Direct. They have a long list of complaints. They're not happy with the share price, which has slumped. They're not happy with profits that have fallen. They're not happy with all those negative headlines about poor working practices here at this site. They're not happy with some of the business deals Sports Direct has done in the last 12 months. One involving Mike Ashley's brother, the other involving the boyfriend of his daughter. They don't think this company is well run. They want change. They want a proper independent investigation. The board isn't going to give them one as it stands.
And as you say rightly, it's a shareholder decision, but Mike Ashley's got 55% of the shares. How do you think it's actually going to go?
Well, look, there will be a rebellion. The question is the scale of it. It won't necessarily force Mike Ashley's hands. He has the controlling stake in the company. But most of the anger focuses on the chairman, Keith Halliwell, the government's former drug czar. He might be a name familiar to some of our viewers. He won a reputation in the police force as RoboCop. Well, shareholders see him as a bit of a pussycat on this board, someone who's inclined to roll over and do what Mike Ashley wants. We'll get the result of the vote sometime this afternoon.
All right, Joel, and we'll hear more from you at 6:30. Thank you very much. Now, it doesn't seem like a week goes by without disruption on the trains, and today Southern Trains began the most recent of their 48-hour strikes. It's the fifth to affect the company since April. Some routes have had all services cancelled, and it's all part of an ongoing row about changes to the role of conductors on board those trains. Nick Wallace reports.
Another rush hour and another blow for passengers using the worst performing train company in the country. Strike action.
You know, I can see their point. Someone's, you've got to make a stand, you've got to say something, but then we're the ones that's suffering for it.
They don't quite understand that all of us have to get to work.
It's very rare that I get to put my children to bed. I become exhausted with the overcrowding and the running from platform to platform, and it's very stressful, and my employer's patience is running out.
On the face of it, the two-day walkout is a dispute about making more drivers operate train doors on certain routes. But union leaders say there are unseen hands pulling the strings.
The government are driving this dispute politically, and this all maximises the profits of the train operating companies, which make huge donations to political parties.
The government pays a company called Govia Thameslink to run Southern and has recently committed £20 million of taxpayers' cash towards improving the service. It also admits being in daily contact with its management team. But does that mean it's using the train operator to force through an anti-union cost-cutting agenda, as the RMT is claiming?
This is really a battle between the government and the unions, with Govia being in between, because the government wants changes to the way that the railway is staffed, reducing the number of conductors on trains, which will save money in the long run.
The government denies telling Southern's management to push through any cost-cutting and squarely blames the unions for today's action. Stuck in the middle are long-suffering commuters, just trying to get to work. Nick Wallace, ITV News.
And still to come, the Paralympic torch reaches Rio as the world awaits tonight's spectacular opening ceremony. And now you see it, but why you won't be seeing this chimney any longer. But first, the government's announced plans to modernise the NHS, further bringing it into the digital age and making it better suited to the smartphone generation. New measures will include setting up a website where people can enter their symptoms to get advice, and an app through which patients can book appointments and order prescriptions. They'll also be able to search for which hospital offers the best treatment in their area. Well, our health editor Rachel Younger is at an event in Manchester where that has just been announced. Rachel, first and foremost, I'm sure many of us are up to speed technically, as it were, but do we really know enough about medicine to enter this kind of crucial data into an app?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? And let's be clear, this isn't designed to replace that crucial doctor-patient relationship. What the NHS believes it could do is free up around £4 billion, which could then be reinvested back into the NHS. Why do they need to do it? Well, they point out we live in the age of the smartphone and the NHS should be a part of that. And they believe that if it works, it is a big if, it will help improve patient experience when it comes to both treatments and services. And you have to remember too the kind of pressure our GP surgeries are under, with demand for appointments going up 3 times faster than the number of GPs themselves. So you can see why they want to make this information more available. Obviously, for many young people these days, it is second nature to be able to do this kind of thing. They're not asking for us to diagnose ourselves, purely making it easier for us to get some of the information it needs. Will it work for everybody? Well, that's another question.
Indeed so. Rachel, thank you very much indeed. Police in France say a car which was found stranded in Paris with several gas cylinders inside was owned by someone who was on their watch list. The vehicle was left close to Notre Dame Cathedral last Saturday night, but was removed safely. 2 people have been arrested and investigations are continuing. A new report from UNICEF has revealed that nearly 50 million children have been driven out of their own countries by conflict or migrated across borders. The charity says that 1 in every 200 children in the world is now a refugee. Warren Gatland's been appointed head coach for the British and Irish Lions tour to New Zealand in 2017. It's the second time he's taken on the role after his success in Australia 3 years ago. Now, there are just hours to go until the opening ceremony of tonight's Paralympic Games. With 264 British athletes ready and itching to get started, today the Prime Minister officially paid tribute to what she called the phenomenal medal haul in London 2012, and she wished them all good luck this time round.
This year in Rio, while you may not see those same British crowds around you, I want you to know that we will be there in spirit, watching on our televisions and willing you on all the way. I know that again, you will make our nation proud.
And correspondent Richard Pallow is in Rio, where the preparations are almost complete.
Well, the wait is over. The Paralympics get underway today. The action starts tomorrow at the park behind me, but tonight it's all about the opening ceremony across town at the Maracanã Stadium. The torch is here in Rio already. It arrived yesterday. It was taken on a tour of many of the city's iconic landmarks, including, of course, Christ the Redeemer statue. It will then work its way through Rio as the day progresses to turn up at the Maracanã early this evening. I actually met a volunteer from Stevenage, of all places, who's come over to get involved in these games because he was so impressed with the Paralympics 2012 in London. I asked him, what is the opening ceremony like? And he said, well, as usual, you can't really give too many details away, but he described it as typically Brazilian, a fusion of music, colour and chaos. And we actually spent yesterday evening with some of the dancers who will be involved in that ceremony, a mixture of able-bodied and those in wheelchairs. And again, that's one of the key themes, I think, of tonight. They want to emphasise the breaking down, if you want, between the two separate disciplines. So that is what is in store tonight. The medal rush, hopefully, for Britain for Paralympics GB starts tomorrow morning, and we have plenty of chances on day one. But tonight, as I say, all about that opening ceremony.
Richard Pallet there for us in Rio. And did I mention that Lee Pearson, the dressage rider, was carrying the flag? Yes, I probably did. Finally, a towering chimney which has pierced the Kent skyline for nearly 30 years has been demolished. It took just seconds for the former power station chimney on the Isle of Grain to become rubble, creating a spectacular scene. Suzanne Verdi was watching.
Going, gone. It took just seconds to demolish Britain's tallest concrete structure. Standing at 244 metres, or just over 800 feet in old money, Grain Power Station chimney had been part of the landscape in Kent for 37 years. To give it some context, the landmark tower was taller than 55 double-decker buses. Former power station workers and locals gathered at special viewing points to watch the spectacle.
My wife actually worked on the power station when it was built 40 years ago. She worked for the engineers and she climbed to the top of the tower. That's a claim to fame, but seeing it go down is all a bit sad, really.
I don't think I had time for much emotion when it came down. It came down so quickly.
The power station used to produce enough electricity to power 1 million homes, but was decommissioned in 2012 after becoming economically unviable.
The peak times were probably during the 80s. And in periods during the 80s when the country needed this power from grain the most, it was actually delivering approaching 25% of the UK's needs.
Its demolition has left behind 40,000 tonnes of concrete rubble, a cloud of dust and a new-look landscape. Suzanne Verdi, ITV News.
We all watched that quite a few times, I must confess. That is it this lunchtime. Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale will be here with the ITV Evening News, the news where you are follows the national weather. But for now, from all of us here, bye-bye.